Well, should I buy or lease the panels? What are most people doing these days? Great question. As I mentioned before, there's been some negative public view about leases and how they just can be a nightmare when you go to sell your house. Now, I've heard those anecdotes, and I think there's a way around them in every case. So we can walk through it. You may be on a fixed income and not need a tax credit, may not have the tax appetite for it. So leasing the system allows the leasing company to take the tax credit and pass on that lower payment to you. It also keeps the maintenance liability on the leasing company, right? That's why a lot of people lease cars. It's why we lease a lot of equipment. It's for the economics. It's cheaper to own, and there's no liability. Except when you go to sell the house, you either have to pay off the lease or the new homeowner has to assume it. And they would have assumed the utility meter if they came in and got the house and there was no solar. And the solar lease should be cheaper in almost every case. Now, I've heard nightmare scenarios about it being higher than maybe the electric bill would have been, and we can calculate that. Sometimes people opt for a much lower lease payment up front, and there's a built-in escalator, so it goes up incrementally, often 2.9% a year, which is very similar to the rate that utility rates go up. Now, if the lease payment is significantly lower than the electric bill, and typically it's 30 to 50% lower than the electric bill was, and they're both going up at 2.9%, the utility bill should always be higher than the solar lease payment. Unless someone did some really bad math or didn't notice the system's not producing what it should, and there's a higher than there should be remaining electric bill, but we can determine that. And if the leased system isn't delivering the power that it was contracted to provide, the leasing company owes that homeowner a refund, and that warranty, that production guarantee, transfers to the new owner. So it should be very little risk. We just have to educate ourselves and go about it as responsibly as possible. And that's the way I view the leasing scenario. Now, buying is a wonderful way to do it. Often people are taking advantage of the low interest financing available these days, just because using other people's money gives you leverage and allows you to keep your cash for other things you may want to do, maybe other investments that provide an equally high return if you can get the access to the money for the solar investment at a very low rate. But people who are approaching retirement or just want all of their costs fixed, they want to have their everything paid for free and clear, the solar array with the tax credit that's currently in place should pay for itself in 4 or 5 years. In other words, you would have paid that amount for utility bills. It would have gone out, up in thin air just to keep the lights on. You're going to spend that money just to keep the lights on with the utility bills in 4 or 5 years of utility bills anyway. So might as well get something for it and then have no more costs and get an extra 20 years of warranted power from that 25-year warranted system.